So let's look at the patterns of vote buying in the Anambra elections. And there are three patterns that we identified in the course of our observation. The first one was that political and party agents came to polling units with notebooks, and they were taking records of voters who were casting votes for their political party. Because based on our PVT data, in 18% of polling units, the voting cubicle was placed in a way that voters could expose, their votes. So you can clearly tell how a particular voter, voted. In one of the major candidates violated, Section 122 of the Electoral Act regarding secrecy of the ballot. Because after voting, he clearly displayed, his ballot paper to indicate where he had voted. That is an aberration, of the rule of law. And it's impunity. And because few years ago, the former President Buhari voted and did the same thing where he displayed his ballot to show where he actually voted. This act of impunity is what is reinforced by the actions we see from voters. So we cannot blame voters when leaders who should show example are not showing example because they feel that they can break the law and no one will sanction them. So that's the first pattern. The second pattern was that we also saw cases where POS machines were being used to effect vote trading in some of the polling units. And the last one was the traditional, deploying of resources and cash, to polling units, and you could see that exchange happening. And some of those polling units were really turned to auction centers because they've just become marketplaces as opposed to sites where voters are exercising their sovereignty in a constitutional democracy like ours. And so in fact, some of security officials deployed to 98% of polling units. How come that the security agents have not come public to tell Nigerians the number of people they arrested, except the EFCC? Because in those polling units, you also have what? You have security agents. INEC officials are not saddled with the responsibility of arrest. That's why you have the security agencies. And so we should also ask the security agencies the same question, because sometimes some of these acts are perpetrated within the bounds of the polling units that are not visible to the INEC officials. It doesn't mean that in some cases the presiding officers cannot see them. I was in a polling unit where the presiding officer was reprimanding some of the voters, cautioning them on displaying their ballot papers. But it takes, security agencies and other actors performing their responsibility to prevent these acts of deviant political behavior that undermines the legitimacy of outcome. Because some can contest that perhaps the outcome and even the turnout and also the outcome is what you call procured turnout or procured outcome. Because it might not be a reflection of the will and aspiration of the people because the choice was compromised ab initio. And we leave room for people to raise these questions when agencies that have the responsibility of regulating and protecting the secrecy of the ballot do not perform their responsibility.